What's good? Muri Zimbabwe lingali chona njani muri Zimbabwe mthakazo muhle Zimbabwe muhle and Dapiko Muhammad Zangu. If you're tuned in right now, you're tuned into Live Talk The Connection, brought to you by Studio 7 Voice of America on Tuesday, August 10, 2021. Muri Zimbabwe mthakazo muhle. I'm your host, Mike Hove. Once again, muri Zimbabwe mthakazo muhle. If you're tuning in right now, welcome wherever you are in the world. If you're in Africa, good evening. If you're in America, good afternoon. Wherever you're in the world, welcome. We're coming to you live from our studios in Washington, D.C. Tonight on The Connection, we speak to Zimbabwean youth about the coronavirus pandemic. We focus on the lockdown, which has recently been extended by President Emmerson Mnangagwa by another 2 weeks. If you're looking to join us, muri Zimbabwe, you can call us live on air. The number is +1 202-619-2077. The number again, +1 202-619-2077. For those that are streaming this conversation live on our 3 Facebook pages, that being VOA Studio 7, VOA Shona, and VOA Ndebele Zulugandaba, kindly share the program with your networks. Lingakhohlwa njalo ukufitizela lapha ubhala ukuthi like, kuthinya phaya phakanzi like, ukuze sibone ukuthi ngempela Zulugandaba sisonke like so. Thilithose phana upachirongwa chedu chevechidiki panefengi Studio 7. So ngempela fitizela lapha ukubhala ukuthi like ukuze sibone ukuthi hayi likhona kuhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo njalo libukele ngobunengi benu. Also feel free to write the comments in your comments section and we're going to be reading those comments live on air. Without wasting time, Maria Sibamba, let's delve into the discussion. First up, an update on COVID-19. Now, according to the most recent information released by the Ministry of Health and Childcare, Zimbabwe currently has 16,853 confirmed COVID-19 cases, 90,120 recoveries, and 3,919 deaths. As of last night alone, 3,369 PCR tests were conducted, 526 new cases were detected, 1,381 recoveries, 19 deaths. The country currently has 27,800 active COVID-19 cases. And when we talk about the COVID-19 vaccine to date, 1,897,414 people have taken the COVID-19 vaccine. Of those that have taken both the first and the second jab is 1,044,365. But now, whilst on the discussion of coronavirus in Zimbabwe, last night, as I mentioned earlier on Muri Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa announced that Zimbabwe would be continuing with the COVID-19 lockdown for another 2 weeks. Let us head over to a clip that we have of President Emmerson Mnangagwa talking about the lockdown. The next clip we're about to play is courtesy of Zim Papers, a TV network. To watch the full clip, head over to their Facebook page.
The nation has made good progress in controlling the resurgence and hence the third wave. The increase in new cases per day has gone down considerably in the past 2 weeks, even to less than 10% for most provinces. This is a clear indication that the third wave and the pandemic in general is being brought under control. Unfortunately, the number of new cases and deaths per day remain unacceptably high. It is for this reason that the current lockdown level 4 has to be extended by another 2 weeks. I urge us all to comply with requirements of this emergency. Adherence to all prevention measures will enable the country to continue on the right path to recovery.
Well, Muri Zimbabwe, that was President Emmerson Mnangagwa talking about the COVID-19 lockdown in Zimbabwe, which has been extended by another 2 weeks. To give us a better understanding of what's happening on the ground, the lockdown which has been extended, and of course other issues, we're joined by Decent Dube of the Matobo Youth Development Initiative. Dube, welcome to the program. Before, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mike. I'm good. How are you doing there?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us. So let's kick it off. The lockdown, that's the most topical thing we have, has been extended by another 2 weeks. So technically, Zimbabwe would have been on lockdown for about 6 weeks consecutive. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is helping?
Yeah, yesterday the president extended the lockdown, and as much as it was a shock to most of the people, or young people to be specific, I think it was a necessity. It's not like we are yet safe from the COVID-19. The vaccination is ongoing, and the response is not that convincing. I feel like most of the vaccine is not available in most of the centers, especially in rural areas. So I think there is need to continue having this lockdown. Unfortunately, the lockdown might be ineffective just because there is no vaccine, and most of the people, there is no choice but to go out there and defend for themselves. Mm-hmm. So as much as it is so necessary to have this lockdown, I feel like there are some measures we need to complement the lockdown, like the availability of vaccines, as well as the rollout of the vaccine, or the availability of it in rural areas.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little more about that, and we'll start off with the how people are abiding to the COVID-19 lockdown. If we look at just the statistics themselves, over the past 2 weeks, as announced by President Emmerson Mnangagwa yesterday, and the clip that we played earlier on, the stats actually have decreased to the government's credit. The amount of people that are contracting and the amount of people that are dying over the past 2 weeks has decreased. I remember last week would be reporting on average it was about 50 to 100 at times people that would die. But now we're talking about 10, 20, maximum we're talking 30 people. Today it was just about 19. How helpful do you think the lockdown has been in that concept?
Yeah, the numbers are positive. It's showing signs of improvement in terms of people who have died. Now, compared to last few weeks, it's showing some signs of improvement. So I'm not quite sure. I'm not expecting to actually determine whether it's because of the lockdown or whether it's because of the way people are responding to the vaccination, mm-hmm. or it's just that maybe the virus maybe is losing its deadliness. But I feel like we are on the right track in terms of achieving, maybe fighting COVID-19. Whatever is happening, I feel like we're on the right track. So you wouldn't be surprised if the authorities they maintain the status quo and continue with the lockdown. But mm-hmm. I feel like we're on the right track. So we're hoping that people might maybe be resilient and soldier on in this hard time, while we are trying to find the perfect solution in this situation.
When we take a look at what's happening in the rural areas, because that's where you guys predominantly focus, how have people been responding, and how are people surviving under the lockdown? As I mentioned, 6 weeks straight, that's a very long time for some people to not be working, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's really hard. It's really hard. Of course, Matobo, where I am based, is a mining growth point. The miners are business as usual. They are continuing with their work, but businesses are affected so massively because they are supposed to close at 3:30, and most of the time that's when the miners will be getting into town to actually do their business. So most of the time that's why we are expected to be making money from 3 to evening, but mostly are supposed to close. So it's been a tough situation. The lockdown has been affecting young people, women, and other marginalized groups. So it is really tough. Sometimes you can only imagine how people are surviving, but it's a very tricky situation. So it's really hard. We're hoping that we can maybe get back to normal, and we can only just be optimistic that many people are going to take the vaccine in order for us to maybe get back to to normal.
All right, decent. Let me hold you on the line for 1 second. We have a couple of videos from residents who are commenting on the COVID-19 vaccination program in Zimbabwe. They're also talking about the effect of coronavirus on Zimbabweans, which I'd like to play. And when we come back, I'd like your feedback. Muria Zimbabwe Mthokozo Muhle, let us head over to the first video that we have, whereby a resident of Harare spoke to VOA correspondent Rutendo Mawere. Let's take a look.
Straight tinobaiwa vaccine yacho saka ava manje apa tamira pachiu apa tidziwe kuti chii chikuitika mberi taenda mabasa handiti izvi zvava kunyora pamberi avazvita maofisi because vanhu tiri mukiu handiti tabva kure vafanira kuti titochi zviri right.
Saka muri kuona zvichikunetsa here zvokuti monyoresa mozodzoka futi?
Izvozvi zvinonetsa. Vaita mamwe mavhaccine ka mune mamwe makiriniki kuti vanhu vasawande panzvimbo wanda.
Mabva kupi?
Zviri mune muAvhona.
Hakuna here kumacancer clinic?
Taenda kuikwidza kuno kwakabvara havasi kuvaccine. Vaisa mamwe malocal clinic tichi very outskirt. Story nani izvozvo kuti vanhu vasawande panzvimbo.
Well, Muria Zimbabwe, you're hearing there, that was one of Harare's residents speaking to VOA correspondent Rutendo Mawere. But now, VOA's Ezra Chisasbanda also took to the streets of Bulawayo Gontutu Ziatunga, where he spoke to some residents. Let us take a look at what one of the young residents had to say.
Mina ngitawanda kaseke.
Etawanda kaseke. Nyakubona lapha ke uyapota kwenzakalani wenzani empilweni?
Hayi mina ngisomagesi ngenza ngamagetsi. Ngingumsika technician.
Umkhuhlane lo corona ke uzwani ngawo?
Umkhuhlane lo ubhahile lo lokho sisenza ama lockdowns mask up sisivikela.
Kodwa usebenza njani nxa kunje?
Hayi ukusebenza kuyasebenzeka. As long wena uzivikele kuphela. Uqathile ukuzivikela.
Swahlatshwa yini wena?
Hayi kwamanje angahlatshwa.
Ukhala ukuthi uzahlatshwa nini? Kumbe yesabo ngilo wasozihlatshe lawa.
Hayi ngizahlatshwa.
Awesabi kodwa wena?
Hayi.
Awesabi. Abahlatshwe bathini bona?
Abahlatshwe bathi khona nje ku right.
Sokwabona umuntu ogula umkhuhlane lo?
Sofa ngambona.
Akwambona?
Hayi angambona.
Kodwa ufile uyezwa kuphela?
Ngiyuzwa kuphela.
Akwambona ogula ngawo umbona ukuthi njani?
Hayi angambona.
Awuzothi bathi bakhala umuntu uyabe ngasephelwa umoya uzakuzwa?
Ya ama-symptoms akhona ngihlala nsizwa ngawo ubalelana ukukhwehlela ukuthuqa
uthini ebantwini ungaba-advise abanjengomuntu osebenzayo?
I-advise engabanikana abantu ukuthi bezivikele because lo mkhuhlane seems u-affecta kakhulu uyamosha kakhulu.
Okay.
No, ayisiyabonga kakhulu.
Hayi Zulukandaba liyamuzwa phela osakhulayo lapha uThawanda Kaseke ubexoxa le ntatheli izindaba ye-Studio 7 uEzra Chisasbanda. Sithanda ukubonga uEzra kanye loRutendo for those interviews. Decent, are you still there on the line, Bafo?
Yes, I'm still on the line.
So the first one that I want to, focus on there is the interview enziwe nguRutendo. My takeaway from that predominantly focuses on how people are calling for, the vaccines, as you mentioned earlier on, to be decentralized and make sure someone in the most rural of areas can go next door to the local clinic and receive a vaccine. What's happening in places like Matopo? Are people finding easy access to the vaccines, especially in the local clinics?
What has been happening in Matopo, especially in rural areas, is that most of the people that have been going there to vaccinate, but they couldn't find the vaccine in most cases. So some of the clinics, most of them, honestly, they have the vaccine, but the queues are long, which shows that there is need to maybe increase the places where the vaccination is taking place. Mm-hmm. But in most cases, now people are aware of the need of taking the vaccine, and they are just looking to have the vaccine, and you can, in most cases, you find that they could not find the vaccine in various clinics. For example, in St. Joseph, I heard that the vaccine does not take long. If it's delivered, it doesn't take long. Most of the time, it's finished. So it shows how vulnerable people are becoming, and they need to be vaccinated as a matter of ages. They see the need to vaccinate, but most of the time they don't get the vaccine.
Sesithinta-ke udaba lolu ngolimi lukamama ngamafishane decent before we move over to the other clips that I would like to play, because you're also a human rights activist, so there's some human rights discussions that are coming with the COVID-19 vaccine that I want to touch on. But before we head over to that, ngifisa ukuthinta lolu daba ngolimi lukamama ngamafishane. Njengosakhulayo nantu uhlelo lwe COVID-19 lockdown level 4 lulokho liqhubekela phambili another 2 weeks simuzwe umongameli Emerson Mnangagwa announcing izolo. Njengosakhulayo ukubona njani lokho?
Yeah, i-lockdown yona vele isethuse kakhulu besingakhangelelanga besizithi khona mhlawumbe iza some of ama-regulations abantwana besikole bekwazi ukuthi bebuyele esikolweni. Sazikhuluma last week we were talking about abantwana abancane abazithwalayo kade kulama-issues abantwana abancane ababethele nzima ngenxa ye-abuse abahlangana layo. Ngenxa yokuthi most of them sebesekhaya, abanye ngabazithele ukwazi ukuthi khona babuyele esikolo. So i-lockdown is making things worse, socially, politically, as well as economically. So sinesifiso sokuthi ngabe izinto can get back to normal, and the advice engayinika abantu ngixwayisa ukuthi khona mhlawumbe sizama ukuthi sivaccinate ngoba yinto manje engasenza ukuthi khona sigcine sikwanisile ukuthi sibuyele esimeni esiright. So but we can still not force abantu ukuthi khona kube mandatory vaccination ngoba into ebalulekile ukuthi silethe information ifike bebe lolwazi lokuthi ma bevaccinata bavaccinata ngayiphi vaccine and yonke information beyithole. So i-information yebalulekileyo so khona abantu bangasoze bebe reluctant because most of information abayitholayo ama-conspiracy theories ayenza ukuthi beyesazi becabanga ukuthi i-vaccine le akusinto engabasilisa but engabayenza ukuthi batshone. So yikho okuthiwa kube nzima ukuthi khona now the government is fighting against fake news le pandemic, then kuba nzima kakhulu. So into ebalulekileyo ukuthi khona abantu bethole information right. So i-government needs to avail information for abantu abasemakhaya ukuthi kube easy ukufayitha i-COVID-19.
Njengenhlanganiso ekhokhelwa ngabantu abasakhulayo, what exactly are you guys doing ukusiza uZulu ngalesi sikhathi uhlelo lwe-lockdown lokhe luqhubekela phambili for another 2 weeks?
Esikwenza kahle since we cannot asikwanisi ukuthi sibe labantu abasha sibahlanganise endaweni eyi-one because we're adhering to ama-regulations akhona in a fight for i-virus. Into esiyenzayo ukuthi we're using i-WhatsApp ukuthi khona to reach out to abantu abasha. We talk about i-importance yokuthi khona beqhubeke bezivikela ku-COVID-19 and bekwazi nokuthi khona i-COVID-19 isasekhona. And into esiyenzayo ukuthi khona they become champions of i-fight against gender-based violence, which has been happening kakhulu eMatobo. So sifuna ukuthi khona abantu abasha bekwazi ukuthi khona they can be advocates against gender-based violence. So yindlela esizama ukuthi siba-engage ngayo benanzelele ukuthi be-connecte the relationship between COVID le-GBV. So even lama-challenges like some of the entrepreneurship opportunities abangaphuma lawo during COVID-19. So siyabezama ukuthi simotivethane nokuthi how can we deal with trauma at this moment in time, because young people are affected or serious, but sometimes they section yabantu ignored. So we're trying to engage them with a platform lapho sixoxa khona sikwazi ukuthi sizimotivate.
Okay, decent. What on the line before you touched on something which I also want to delve a little deeper into about the rights of people when we talk about the COVID-19 vaccine. So hold on the line for 1 second. Muria Zimbabwe, I want to spotlight another challenge faced by Zimbabweans. There has been reports of some companies urging their employees to take the COVID-19 vaccine, and when they don't, they're either told to stay at home, and at times they lose out on their benefits. At times they've gone as far as losing their jobs. Over the weekend, my colleague Blessing Zulu caught up with Chamburikira Mananga, who is one of these people who actually lost his job due to this procedure. Let us hear what they had to say.
zvakaita ndezvokuti basa kumira kwarakaita pane vakavhakisinwa pakuudzwa kwatakaitwa takaudzwa chinzi vhakisini iri kuuya iyi ndeyekudzivirira coronavirus uye yakasununguka akasununguka anobayiwa asina haabayiwi asi zvakaita ndezvokuti takazongoona basa kunzi vasina kubayiwa regedzai basa dzoserai maturusi ebasa saka pari zvino takatodzosera maturusi hatisi kuzvaki toita sei pari zvino nenhau yeupenyu kurarama.
Saka vangani vakambomiswa basa kana kuti vakatogumurwa pari zvino nenyaya yekuti havana kubayiwa nhomba?
Pari zvino vasina kubayiwa nhomba iyi vanosvika 9 kana kivapfumbamwe vasina kubayiwa nhomba iyi pasekshini yatiri yetriangle section 14 zvino hapana matanho ati atorwa panhau iyi takangogara pari zvino.
Asi chikonzero chii chaizvo chiri kuita kuti musabayiwe nhomba? Vamwe vanoti inyaya dzezvitendero zvavo zvisingavabvumidze, vamwe ndo vanoti havana ruzivo rwakakwana. Chenyu chikonzero ndechei?
Chikonzero hatisati takanzwisisa maererano nevhakisini kuti marapiro ayo wemapesendeji acho haasati anzwisika. Saka chinhu chinotiremera zvakanyanya kuti unzwisise kuti ndopinda mazvirere kana ndorega. Saka upenyu hwacho hunonge hwapatambo.
Muri Zimbabwe, you're hearing there from one of the gentlemen who has actually lost his job ngenxa yalolu hlelo lokuthi abantu kumele bayohlatshwa ijekiseni vari kutsanangura ka vamananga vangachichema vachithi iwe wakatorasikirwa nebasa nepamisana penyaya iyi. But Blessing also reached out to legal expert advocate Nobudaishe Chinyoka to hear whether or not what some of these companies are doing is legal. Let us hear what advocate Chinyoka had to say.
Hachisi chokwadi kuti hazvisi pamutemo. Constitution yedu inotendera kuti zvinogona kuitiwa kuti pane dzimwe nguva in the interest of zvinhu zvakawanda kusanganisira chinonzi public health, mamwe marights evanhu anogona kunzi hai iyoyo tombomira timbokoshesa upenyu hwavanhu, utano hwevanhu. Saka kana tikati kana usina kubayiwa nhomba gara kumba, tamisa your right to freedom of movement. Kana tikati munhu wose ngaabayiwe nhomba nokuti toziva kuti zvinodzivirira, tamisa an aspect right to freedom of choice.
Sika vari kuti panyaya dzenhomba apa ikodzero yavo vachinyoka yekuti kana vasingadi havo kubayiwa havadi kubayiwa.
Chatofanira kurangana nacho kuti vanhu vose ivava vanotaura kuti kwanzi handidi kubayiwa nhomba iyi, ukavatarira mavoko avo vanadzo nhomba dzeBCG dzavakabayiwa, havana kufa. Vanenge vachitaura izvo vachitaipa pamaselfoni iwaya, mamwe acho akagadzigwa kunyika idzodzo dzokunana China dzavanoti nhomba yekuchina haishandi. Foni iyo ndokwayakabva yaari kutaura nayo.
Asika takaona svondo rapera veZimbabwe Human Rights Commission vachiti pamutemo vanhu havafaniri kumanikidzwawo.
Vanhu veZimbabwe Human Rights Commission vari kungobatirawo pamusoro nokuti vanofungira ndofunga kuti basa ravo nderokungopikisa kuti vavonekwe kuita sokuti vanoi havasi kukontroliwa nehurumende, but zvimwe zvinenge zvavavo zvokungoda kuda kungobatira zvinhu pamusoro nokuti pasi rose rino nyika dzose zvadzo dzose dziri kuita mitemo yokuti vasina kubayiwa nhomba havagoni kuinda kumabasa, vasina kubayiwa nhomba havagoni kukwira mabhazi, vasina kubayiwa nhomba havagoni kuita zvinhu zvizhinji zvavari kumisiwa kune dzimwe nyika. Saka handivoni kuti chinhu chaitika muno muZimbabwe chingai chinoshamisira kudarika zvozvo ndechipi. Vanhu vanenge vachingoda kungovoneregwa kuti vaite sokuti tohwisisa mutemo toziva mahuman rights, but apa vaita pfocho, havasi kutaura zvinhu zviri pamutemo, vari kureva nhema.
Well, Azulukandaba Leamuzwa phela advocate Nobudaishe Chinyoka, he was on the phone with Blessing Zulu, my colleague. So liyezwa okusanda kushiwo ngabantu lapha Zulu kandaba lina likubona njani ngenani kuhlelo +1 202 619 2077 is the number to call. Let's head back to umnumzana Decent Dube sizwe umbono wakhe ngalolu daba. Dube usakhona ecingweni bafo?
Yes, ngisasekhona bhuti.
Right, so let's touch on this discussion here. Njengosakhulayo, who's also a human rights activist, ukubona njani nangu omunye umnumzana uMananga ubekhala ngempela esithi hayi waxoshwa emsebenzini ngenxa yokuthi bamtshela ukuthi sekumele athathe leli jekiseni elivikela i-COVID-19 kodwa bona bayasho ngempela, as you highlighted earlier on, ukuthi abalalo ulwazi oluthile about ijekiseni leli, so bona bayesaba ukulithatha leli jekiseni kodwa khangela manje sebelahlekelwe umsebenzi.
I think into engekho emthethweni, because into ebalulekileyo bese ngisho ukuthi khona ama-authorities kumele ahambise information ifike ebantwini, ngoba kulesizathu sokuthi abantu beqale kwesaba ukuthi ngisokuthi information esiyitholayo eningi ile engaqondanga. So into ebalulekileyo ukuthi khona behambise information ebantwini, abantu bekwazi ukuthatha ama-decision from an informed perspective, ngoba umuntu uma esexotshe emsebenzini ngenxa akafuni ukuhlatshwa kusuka sokuyiku-abuza amalungelo abantu. So into ebalulekileyo ukuthi khona i-government i-responde positively ngokuthi khona imake sure ukuthi khona they explain to abantu ukuthi khona ama-vaccine la ama-consequences akhona iwathi lawathi, ukuze wonke umuntu oyethatha i-decision ebekwazi ukuthi khona i-decision leyo ithatha ngoba esazi ukuthi khona ulwazi alutholile luqondile.
Kodwa naye ingcwethi kwezemithetho u-advocate Chinyoka yena ubesithi hayi uhulumende and all these companies umthetho isekelo sombuso siyasho ngempela ukuthi at some stage and point other human rights outride or override other human rights. So for example, the right to human's life or dignity can override some of these human rights. Also, you saying angifuni ukuhlatshwa leli jekiseni, and so the government is within its right in practicing this, and some of these companies are within their rights to practice this. He highlighted that. He also highlighted ukuthi lokho kwenziwa ngamankampani kwele Zimbabwe is something that's being done across the world. Even lapha kwele America is being, it's something that's being done ukuthi nxa ungakathathi leli jekiseni likhona ilithuba lokuthi ulakho ukuvuka kusasa bakutshela ukuthi ungabuye emsebenzini. How would you guys react to that?
I think it's something which we need to interrogate as a collective, because ma kungabe kunjalo wonke umuntu usezahlaba ngenxa ukuthi khona akana choice, and we can't be taking such a very important decision out of desperation. Into ekhona ukuthi everyone has to know ama-effects ukuthi khona mangahlatshwa injection le kwenzakalani, and the only way yokuthi khona bonke abantu bethi mabe ngabe behlaba ijection bekwazi ukuthi bayihlabelane ukuthi khona information ibe khona. Ma ukuthi khona kuqondile sikwazi ukuthi khona akulanto embi engavelela abantu uma behlaba injection, I don't think kunzima ukuthi khona ufinyelela nasebantwini bajele. So the reluctance yokuthi khona abantu beyesabe ukuhlaba injection le is because the right people are not reaching out to them. So kusuka kube nzima khona ukuthi khona basebezibuza ukuthi khona yini le enza ukuthi khona bengaseli. Abanye they even think ukuthi khona the leaders are not even taking that vaccine. That's what they think. So kuba nzima ukuthi khona bona benjani bethatha i-vaccine. So into lezi yizo ezibalulekile ukuthi khona at least address the causes of ukuthi abantu bengafuni ukuthatha i-vaccine before even think of suspending them ukuthi bangasabuya emsebenzini. So I think siyabe si-address as something which is not the real issue la. Into ebalulekileyo is to understand ukuthi why abantu bengafuni ukuthatha i-vaccine. Let me take it from there.
All right, that's a very impressive point to highlight there, Bafo. So could you please also explain the same thing as Kiwa singakagqibeli ingxoxo, so that for those that don't understand this in bazwisise ukuthi ubuthini?
Ufuna ngikhulume ngeSindebele?
Yeah, ngesikhiwa uphinde umbono wakho ngesikhiwa.
Okay. I feel like the government needs to reach out to people. Information is key, and even the Constitution talks about the importance of access to information. So I think it's very important for the government to prioritize reaching out to the vulnerable communities, especially the rural communities, and for them to take a decision of sustaining the companies. I think the government needs to take action against those companies because it's something which is wrong. What is important is for the government and other stakeholders to come up as a collective and ensure that everyone is accessing the right information at the right time, to try and debunk the fake news which is circulating online, especially on WhatsApp. So I think it's very important to ensure that everyone is getting the right information before we even think of saying if so and so is not vaccinated, that's the decision which we are taking. Before we we do that, we need to ask ourselves, have we reached out to everyone? Have we disseminated the right information to everyone before we can even talk of deciding what are we going to do about those who are refusing to take the vaccine?
All right, well, Decent, we're about to wrap up here. Could you please throw your last sentiments to the audience, especially the youth? Because for a very long time, throughout this whole time, a lot of people have identified the young group, the under 35, as being the hardest to reach out to in terms of urging them to abide by lockdown regulations, take the vaccine, etc., etc. So what would you have to say to them?
I feel like the young people are the ones who have got the privilege of having social media accounts. We can access a lot of information, either fake, or factual information. So they are aware of what is happening out there. It's unfortunate that most of the time they will be getting fake news and stuff, but to say that young people are the ones who are not adhering to lockdown regulations, I think it's not fair. Because we need to also understand that young people are one of the most affected when it comes to the lockdown, because most of them have been self-employed, some of them have been cross-border traders, and now they need to hustle for them to make ends meet. So most of the young people are not employed, so it's really hard to expect them to just stay there and stay indoors and not try to get out something. So definitely they will end up failing to adhere to the regulations, and they will be found at the wrong side of the law. But the unfortunate thing is that they have no choice, but it's the situation which is compelling them to end up being on the wrong side of the law. So we really need to talk about maybe trying to capacitate them to maybe give them something to start up businesses, to ensure that we give them platforms to come up with ideas on how they can be able to maybe come up with entrepreneurship initiatives so that they can survive during COVID-19, because a lot is happening. That's why most of the young people they are found maybe being perpetrators of gender-based violence, being perpetrators of robberies which are happening throughout the country. So it's very important to really address these people as one of the priorities in the country during COVID-19.
All right, well, Decent, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us lapha kuhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo bafo. Siyabonga kakhulu ngokungena kuhlelo. We really appreciate your input.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu Mike, hoping to join you once again in future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Definitely, we're going to be reaching out soon. Well, Muria Zimbabwe, whilst on the discussion of coronavirus and the works of youth, I'd like to head over to another conversation I had with Thembelihle Mhlanga of Sibanye Trust, a youth-led organization based in Lupane, which is helping citizens better cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. Let us head over to that conversation.
Thank you, Mike. The statistics, the national COVID-19 positive statistic rise is really disturbing. It's really shocking, particularly to note they are all local transmission and not the imported ones. So really, if we haven't taken a step as a nation, taking into consideration our economy and our health facilities that are not in good shape, this might lead to a number of fatalities due to this disease, Mr. Mike.
So, Mhlanga, tell me something. When coronavirus initially broke out in not just in Zimbabwe, but across the whole world, predominantly the people affected were over the age of 40. But now with the evolving coronavirus variant, the youth have not been spared. Now the youth are also amongst the group of people that are dying due to COVID-19. Do the youth of Zimbabwe understand the dangers of coronavirus?
Of late, to note, youths, the young people in Zimbabwe are just, they are just taking a back seat much. They are very much, they believe this, as active as citizens, they are so much absorbed into, particularly social gathering and money spinning activities that keep them, at interactions. They equally believe, they're just not, coming forth in in the prevention of the transmission of COVID-19, leading to, you have noted, like where I'm coming from, you see them maybe socializing, using the back doors of bars, applying areas where football is being watched, and some actually being engaged, particularly in playing social soccer, football, particularly the rural areas. It's really, really disturbing to see the young people not understanding the scourge, this pandemic.
I've had conversations with several medical experts, and one thing they seem to have highlighted, and of course it's correlated by the data released by the Ministry of Health and Childcare, is that as we speak right now, recently, the most affected areas in Zimbabwe are the rural areas. Would you argue that people in the rural areas understand what is happening in Zimbabwe in general? When we talk about coronavirus, we're also talking about the vaccination programs, etc. And of course, do they have easy access to these vaccinations?
Big Mike, in rural areas, it's really disturbing to note that particularly information is not really reaching well. The packaging of information, mostly it's not coming up in local languages.
Now, you're part of Sibanye Trust. What exactly is your organization doing in terms of helping Zimbabwe better handle the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in Lupane, where you guys are based?
As an organization, Sibanye Animal Welfare and Conservancy Trust, we are equally joining the other forces, other stakeholders in sort of engaging in public campaigns, awareness campaigns, and equally distributing the PPEs, the equipments to sort of prevent, like the sanitizers, the masks and stuff. Of course, due to limited resources, maybe the distribution or the donations might be of small units, but equally, even we are designing the small posters that are shared with social media, so as sort of to join the forces. We also join the risk communications and community engagement committee here in Lupane, sort of to augment what the government is doing to alarm, sort of to conscientize, sort of to bring to public awareness the dangers and the updates on the awareness on this COVID pandemic.
Well, Zimbabwe muhlezi lokandaba liyamuzwa uThembelihle Mhlanga lapha ngosakhulayo, who is based in Lupane, ubechasisa ngempela what they encountering emaphandleni. Amure Zimbabwe mangamchinzi wakava Mhlanga, Thembelihle Mhlanga, vangawachitsana ngura zvavari kusangana nazvo kumaruoko vachiti vechidiki vanenge vari kuti netsei mukunyatsohwisisa zviri kuitika vari kuhuhwawo, vamwe vechidiki vachiti coronavirus is not a real thing. Hanzi nanhasi kune vamwe vasiri kunyatsonzwisisa kuti coronavirus iripo zvechokwadi and iri kuuraya vanhu vakati one day. Vabata zvekare nyaya yenhomba sezvambotaurwawo kana vaDhube vakati aiwa kumamisha uko nyaya yenhomba iri kuti netsei, nanhasi ichiri kunetsa. Vari kukurudzira hurumende kuti itange kudistributawo kanhomba mune matingati nechirungu local clinics munzvimbo dzakasiyana siyana. Now let's take a look ukuthi abantu bathini kumakhasi network kuFacebook. Earlier on I mentioned ukuthi if you write your comments on our Facebook pages, we're going to be reading them live on air. Hanzina taurai ndeipapo mkoma Mike aiwa mkoma taurai tinotenda zvikurusa nekupinda. Phineas Chinojga writes, how are you my dear friend? Chinojga, thank you so much for joining us. I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing? I hope you're staying safe. Memory Zulu writes, hello there. Hi Memory, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. Mkoma Richard Moyo Vanyora Hanzi, hello se Mike Hove voisa number hanzi ndifonereiwo aiwachaedza kukufonera mkoma tione kuti tingakupinzai pachirongwa here. Hanzi na baba vambezvi zvichiri zvekuwirirana here. I think apa vari kutaura nyaya yekuti chirongwa cheCovid-19 lockdown chiri kuendera mberi for another 2 weeks. Hanzi naMemory Zulu, so you're telling me that there is no reopening of schools because we're already in August. Please, God, help us. A lockdown till when? And Memory Zulu ari kunyora apa. I hear I have a caller on the line. Let's take a caller and hear what the caller has to say. Caller mtereri, ngiyakwamukela kuhlelo ndiromgamchira mchirongwa. Who's on the line there?
Sawubona baba Dube kunjani?
Mfundisi angiyaphila unjani mfundisi?
Ngikhona kunjani awanoni?
Aiwa it's right siyaphila lapha kwele Melika.
Okay no ngibekithi umntwana. No ngibe ngithanda ukuphawula ngendaba kokuthoma indaba leya yabantu base-Chirezi nangale triangle labo baqothiwe emsebenzini batsho abafuna ukuhlabiwa i-vaccine. Mara the way izinto zikhamba ngakhona even masizwa angithi bomungameli nabo bamemezele phambilini ukuthi ma umuntu maafuna angafuna uhlabiwa akunankinga. So namhlanje sokuyachenja. So inkinga ithome khonapho thana bona phambilini babathi wonke umuntu uyahlatshiwa. So namhlanje mababuya futhi bachenja. So sibona abantu baqothwe emsebenzini mara into leya esinto irayithi. Siyazibona ivina lana eSouth Africa kunabanye abantu vele bathoma ngongoyila bathi mayo babizwe emsebenzini bayifuneka ukuthi mani ngakahlabi angeke nivunyelwe emsebenzini mara laba bajamela amalungelo abantu bathi no akunomuntu fonke aqothwe even masizwa no baba loya ukumela umbusazi wathi umuntu fonke bayenze njalo into le ayisinde right baba wena baba Mike into le iyadanisa kakhulu ayisinto siyivumela ukuthi yenzeke kubantwini ngenxa ukuthi ukuforsa abantu abantu baningi abanye bayaya mara lava baya khona ku right abanye bazizwa ukuthi abona basi right kuyakhona abantu bangagandeleli ukuthi yani bani ngafuni seniqothe emsebenzini into le ngesinye isikhathi ayisinto right chino chinoratidza kuti chinorwadza zvikuru baba chekudzingwa kuvanhu mabasa mukati menguva ino asi tinongokuudza kuti vanhu vanenge vachida kundobayiwa corona vaccine ngavaende sitizva tinongoona kunoku vari kuenda vari kuvanenge vachiti awa tichatoenda nokuti vamwe dzimwe nguva vanenge vachitya vamwe vachiti vanotya tsono iya yakareba zvikuru mabudiso aitwa patv vachioneswa vanenge vachitya but tinongodai vanhu zvikava nemweya waMwari nokuti zvinhu hazvizokumanikidza kunyaya kuzomanikidza vanhu nyaya yekuti munongozoenda nyaya yekuti wanzi basa rinopera zvoita sezvakamborehwa mushoko rokuna zvakazarurwa chapter ya13 ku16 17 18 kuti pachasvika nguva yekuti vanhu vachazomanikidzwa vakasununguka vapfumi nevarombo kuti ani usina maki paruoko kana pahuma yake nevanotenga nokutengesa kana usina chinhu muruoko ubvungu utengesa vataona kuti izvi zvakafanana kuti vanhu vakungomanikidzwa saka hatisingakurudziri kuti vanhu vamanikidzwe vanoda kuenda vaende uye futi kana munyika medu iyo mushonga yacho haisati yatova enough hatitofunga kuti almost vanhu vatobaya vanogorosvika kana 1 million mune vanhu vakawandi
ndanchiti vatodarika 1 million vakabayiwa nhomba
vavangani
pari zvino just under 1.5 vakatora jab yokutanga and then vakatora both first nesecond jab pari zvino they are just under 1.1
handiri mutoona kuti nhamba iyo ishoma vamwe vanhu tinoona maraini marefu vamwe vatoshayiwa mushonga kune dzimwe nzvimbo saka ivo vakumhanya kudzinga vamwe vanhu mabasa manje chirevo chisina kumira zvakanaka but zvine izvazvo ndizvo zvinoita mukati meupenyu kuti dzimwe dzenguva panosvika kuti vamwe vanhu vasvike vamanikidzwe abantu vafoswe kuti vaenze zonge izinto lezo mara asina imwe ndlela egcineni vhele iyo into izokuenzwa mara sizotini mara ngiyafisa kuti kana abomungameli vasebenza ngenye ndlela kuti vangakhona ukufosa abantu even abantu abaye vayohlatshwa ma ivaccine ikhona vangasavi vayohlatshwa ivaccine leyo ngenxa yokuthi ukuhamba kwesikhathi wabona ukufosa abantu kuzokuyenzekalani baba Mike abantu baningi bazogcina bathenga amakhadi ngenxa yokuthi abantu bane-technology nabo wabona ukufosa umuntu abantu bagcina bathenga namakhadi e-coronavirus lawo umuntu ofika bakhona baqhiciza amakhadi lawo angafika lapha bayenza emakompyuteni bafika bachitiza amakhadi la umuntu atenge ikhadi rokuti ndakabayiwa saka zvakafanira zvisi zvinhu zvakanaka tinongokurudzira indinongokurudzira angu kazhinji vechidiki vakawanda tiziva kuti titarisa zvedu kwatiri kunoko tinonamatiri kunoko nekumusha kwedu ano musiyano okunoko anoitwa nenzira yakanaka nokuti vanofamba nemasteji nemakore vakatanga kumakore izvi pakurejeswa kutanga vanhu vazibozi kutanga paage 35 kusvika ku13 ku49 pavhiki dzinotevera iyo vanonge vakutanga vano makore 18 vasingodero saka dai kuzimbabwe vaidaro nokuti kumusha kwedu maitiro acho zvinenge zvinacho zvakangosangana inyama nederere munguva imwe chete.
Regai ndikubvunzei nekuti manyatsotsanangura maondero enyu panyaya yekuti vanhu vaudzwawo kuti vanobayiwa nhomba asi sezvataurwawo kana advocate Chinyoka kuti aiwa pane mamwewo marights ekuti anobva aoverride ma-individual rights. Saka tichitarisa nyaya yekuti chirwere checoronavirus chikuuraya vanhu vakawanda, would you not argue kuti companies within its own rights in terms of protecting vashandi vavo to ensure kuti kana usati wabayiwa nhomba usauye kubasa? Would you not say that's fair?
Yeah, no, ndinokunzwai. I understand that, but chiri zvakadero ka mukoma Mike zvakada ngofana mukunyengetera matiri kuita chere Kristu Jesu paakauya wanga asingafosi vanhu kuti vose ngavanamate Mwari. Dai Mwari akada kufosa vanhu vose kuti vaite zvavanoda nyika ingadei yakapera kufa. Saka dzimwe nguva Mwari pachawo musiki wevanhu tinoziva zviri kuti vanhu pachedu panyika taakutora simba rakanyanyisa kudarika raMwari nokuti chada kutani chokuti hatizivi kuti iyo coronavirus tikanyabayiwa tose nhasi uno panapa inoperere. Tinogabayiwa tose pano hatisingazoti inoperere. Tirasaida kupa nhau yemask ndoga ndakapfeka mask but dzimwe nguva ukafa mukati memwe nzvimbo ukatarisa mukati memask munenge maane dust. Saka zvinhu zvinotitambudza kuti ko zvino coronavirus kana dust richipinda mukati memask inotadza sekuti bata. Saka zvatara vachinyoka indo ikulumewo vachinyoka awasaizwa singe sinye sikati even maunkulunkulu inango kwake tana mati wongo umunhu fauta ngithandaze aenza ngekani kumunhu wonke unkulunkulu yena kwake ukuthi umuntu ufuna ngithandaza ngithandaza umuntu angafuni angeke afoswe. So nyamhlanje smartphone amakhampani afosa abantu ukuthi if you don't want to vaccinated don't come to work, but that thing is not good at all because many people have a right to say yes, to say no. Ngenxa yekuti masibone ndofana mara sizotini baba Mike asina into singayicho atina zvatingazviita nekuti government inoita zvainoda nekuti ndova nesimba revanhu but ndopanda pamufana kuti dai Mwari pachavo vanga vakati vanhu vose ngavandinamate vaite nenzira yavo tingadei pamwe zvino tisipo. Saka nenheye
regai ndikubatei pamuromo ipapo mufundisi. Regai nditore umwe muteereri but before don't hang up, I'm going to come back to you shortly. I like some of the points that you're highlighting. Let me take the other caller and hear what they have to say. Zuluka ndaba ngiyeza ukuthi ngilomunye umlaleli ongenayo kuhlelo. Khola mteereri, welcome to the program. Who's on the line? Caller, hello.
Yes, ndinoda kutaura pamusoro pekubayiwa kwenhomba.
Endrai mberi.
Even though tisingawiri isusu madiaspora nedhivana rimwe naSouth Africa naMexico rimwe namaBhutan vari vana veZimbabwe tinozimutsaayo tirinyika dzasiri redio kana segovernment yedu yekuZimbabwe iri ngotisingawo nezveduyo.
Musi kunzwika zvakanaka baba asi kuti ndikupindurei based on what the little that I heard. Pamunoti government iri kufunga here vanhu nangwe vari mudiaspora kana uri chizvarwa cheZimbabwe unobvumidzwa kakudzokera kumusha kunobayiwa nhomba?
Nekuti tiri kutarisa mafambiro atiri kuita munzira kufamba nemabhazi kuti tiende kuZimbabwe mafambiro achona kuti tikwire mabhazi kugamuchira mari dzimwe dzakati tisingafungidziri nekuti kubva kuSouth Africa
Baba, regai ndikubatei pamuromo. Let me ask my producer to call you back because we can't hear you. Your line is very, very bad. I'm going to ask my producer to call you back and hopefully we can hear you a little more clearer when you come back. But Mfundisi, are you still on the line?
Yes.
Right. And I like the fact that you know ungumfundisi unjalo ungumuntu ongisakhulayo. So another thing I also want to touch on njengoba ungumfundisi is udaba lokuthi bakhona abanye abafundisi to this day abangakhuthazi abalandeli babo ukuthi bathathe leli Jackson lokuhlatshwa elivikela iCovid-19. You know, what role does religion play in educating people about the coronavirus pandemic?
Ya chinhu chandida kutora chekutanga matora zvakanaka like seni samufundisi ndinoona vanhu vakawanda vachindobayiwa vamwewo vatinenge vachibata navo vachindobayiwawo asi nenhau yokudai so chandida kutora chekuti ndichandawo kuti enye ngesinye sikati funa uDavid yena ngokwakhe inkosi ngesinye sikati wabala abantu ngesikhathi mabala abantu ngesikhathi leso uNkulunkulu wamkwatela athi wayenza njalo so uNkulunkulu wafika kuye wathi wena David uyenzelani lokho so futhi uchoose ukuthi uchoose indlala for iminyaka e7 or uchoose igulo or amalanga amathathu yena agcina athi uNkulunkulu uchoose wena kabanogulo uNkulunkulu abulala abantu bafika 70,000 yamadoda so that's why ngithi ngesikhathi njengami ngomfundisi singakhona kuyenza lokho even abafundisi labo bangakhona ukugqugquzela abantu nami angibasobole athi bashori niye ukuthi zimwe zengubani ngibani mali zinonetsa zimwe zenguba ukuthi sewunyari leader zanakaita pana abantu famba ndokudza ndawo ndiyamuntu bayiwa chichi mamathi vamwangu tango kuti amabaona zvivafundisi vaya avana chavanoziva saka dzimwe nguva tiri vafundisi okane suwo tinenge tiri under pressure panhau yakafane iyi asi saka ngokosha ndichoda ngotora kunyika kune vanhu vanoda kundobayiwa vanofanira kuti vaende hazvina dambudziko kubayiwa kunyanya da kunyanya kumotivata varume because I know many people especially men afraid to go there and vaccinated because you afraid the injection so ndoda kukurudzira varume vakawanda kuti ngavaende kana vachinzwa kubayiwa kumborwadzi kundokobayiwa akurwadzi asi kana vachinzwa kuti havagoni kuzvida sezvatinonzwa vamwe vafundisi vanoti hawati zvidi saizvozvo saka ivo vane reasoniwo yavanonge vachipa nenyaya yekuti munongozivawo imimi kana uri leader uri pasi pashe unonge uchiona nzira yashe wadzimwe dzenguva wakagona kuudza vanhu indai mundobayiwa chichi vamwe vanogona asi chakangokosha ndechongoti ini chandoda ngokurudzira angu samufundisi moyo chiri ndinoga I think Sunday ndaitonyengeta no vanonzwa kuda kuenda kundobayiwa vaccine endai makasununguka haisi nhau yokuti zvakadii vanonzwa kuda asi kana unonzwa kuti haadi ngaarege zvake asi kuti hazvina dambudziko kuno unonzwa kuda haisi nhau yokuti tinofoseredza vanhu kuti mudi saka ndachira ndichiti savanhu vaMwari tinofamba nevanoda kufamba neshoko raMwari vanhu vakawanda vari kunyika vasingadi kunamata Mwari but hativafosi kuna Mwari saka zvanofanira even muvaccine muno Mr. Mike kune vanhu vakawanda kuna manyama gulu amaningi even maasikhuluma nje eZimbabwe asithi lana eSouth Africa past 24 hours kushonile abantu bafika 199 so even ma 199 mayinjalo kuna abantu even masibala ilizwe lelonke abantu bahlongakala ngenxa ingase corona bangaki so thothi mhlambe ngelanga ungakhona ukuthi elizwe leSouth Africa lelo even eZimbabwe kuhlongakala abantu 30,000 every day mara ababalwa mara ngenxa ukuthi igulo leli liyathusa mara into engifuna ukutshela abantu abaningi laba balalelayo ukuthi let's try the best because I know this pandemic is not good at all because I see many people as I speak now my sister-in-law is passing away with that COVID-19 so saka kuna vanhu vanonge vachida tinongokurudzira zvishuwa ngatiende uye futi nyika yekwedu yeZimbabwe yanyaita noise nekuti vanhu vari kutochemera mushonga yacho because mavaccine is not enough at all in Zimbabwe there so vanofanira kuti vazame kukurumidza kana vachiwana vobaya vanhu kuti vanhu vose vaende saka zvozoda kungokurudzira hangu asi kunyanyanyai kuyouth nokuti chero kunoku eSouth Africa silana iyouth yawa nayo haikafuni kuya vasajikajika iyouth abantu abachafana nathi abaningi vakhona vasajikajika ngendaba yakhona le vaccine vachi mara siyothemba kuti ukuhamba kwesikhathi abantu vazokhamba.
Alright, mfundisi, ndanchikumbira kuti mukande mashoko enyu ekupedzisira tochipetera huru kuredu. Tinotenda zvikurusa nekupa pano kandai mashoko enyu ekupedzisira.
Okay, mina amazwi ngingathanda kwakhuluma ngithanda ukuthi isithaba sakaZimu siyabona ukuthi amazwe abantu bayaphela ngendaba ye-coronavirus. Abantu baningi balahlekelwe ngemindeni, balahlekelwe ngabo baba abosaziwayo, vanhu vakawanda vakarashikirwa nemabasa akapera nedawa nenhau yedu yendairi. Chingoripo ndechekuti vana vaMwari dzimwe nguva sezvatinoziva kuti shoko raMwari rinoti tiri pasi pevatungamiriri vanotungamirira. Saka ngatizame kungoitawo nenzira yatinoona nayo, nokuti kana mabasa azopera sezvicha vamwe kudzimwa mabasa makhamba kuti azokuti nozokuti. Tandongokudza semufundisi ndinongoti zveshuwa kana neniwo pachangu muri ndiri kurima ririmi because vanhu vakawanda vakanitera. Asi ndongoti ngatigone nepatinogona napo, tigone vanoda kuenda ngavandobayiwa. Hazvirwadzi hazitutori kana masekenzi cherozi vamwe vanogona kumbodhurongekawo vachizotoraiwo mapanado kana machinge mabayiwa. Asi akanyanya kukosha ngatisakangana kunyengetera Mwari panguva yakafanana nedenda iri, nokuti zveshuwa nyika yaparara, vanopera kufa. Ngatinyengetere Mwari asi tandazeni nkulunkulu. Let's pray each and every day about this pandemic, because many people you are suffering outside there. Many people, they are losing life and jobs and everything about these things. So you don't go to Mwari naizozo, brother Mike.
All right, thank you so much, Mfundisi, for joining us. That was really a mouthful. Really appreciate you always putting your number and always wanting to be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Muria Zimbabwe. Now, you heard some of Mfundisi's sentiments touching there on, partially he touched on what's happening with schools, and some of the comments were addressing schools. We had hoped, we had invited some educators to be with us on the program, but unfortunately, due to network, we couldn't get a hold of them. We're hoping that next week, bazangena kuhlelo so that bachasise umbono wabo ngalokho okwenzakalayo ezikolo. But as we wrap up Muria Zimbabwe, I want to spotlight another organization which is helping Zimbabweans better cope with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Let us head over to a report which was done by VOA correspondent Columbus Mavunga, which focuses on the Friendship Bench, an organization which is helping Zimbabweans better cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. Here we're talking about mental health challenges. Let's take a look.
Friendship Bench started in 2006 to provide counseling to those stressed or depressed by the political and economic situation in Zimbabwe. The organization now has branches at most clinics and hospitals in Harare and is the only large mental health therapy service operating in the country. The service is run by volunteers who say they do not want to see people stressed. According to Chengetanya Mukapa, country's coordinator for Friendship Bench, many people have stopped meeting others in person due to COVID-19.
We continue to provide counseling to people who are affected, who are infected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, we are saying that we are not able to do that using our conventional face-to-face. But what we have done as an organization is to migrate to an online platform.
But some, such as Elizabeth Chibeka, still come to their offices. The 49-year-old says her father is battling with COVID-19.
I have nothing to pay for his medical bills. I am unemployed. I have no means to raise funds even for his food. Those are some things stressing me. Hence, I came here to talk to these people. COVID-19 is there and it's real, especially where we stay.
53-year-old Forget Gutuza is one of the counselors at Friendship Bench. She says COVID-19 is dominating her counseling.
COVID-19 has really spread its wings. It's all over, but people are not masking up. I do not know how awareness programs can be done. I wonder why people do not understand the situation we are in. My neighbor conducts church service nearly every day.
Dr. Deborah Machando is the chief of mental health for the World Health Organization's office in Zimbabwe. She says COVID-19 has caused a lot of stress to people.
Lately, we've been seeing a number of psychological disorders, including panic attacks, insomnia, depression, and also a surge in terms of family conflicts and violence. So there are a number of things that people can actually do to mitigate loss of income.
She says they include understanding that the world is in strange times, cutting down on expectations and adjusting downwards on needs. That must be advice for stressed people like Chibeka to take note of as the cases of infections by COVID-19 continue to spike in Zimbabwe, with the Delta variant on the rise. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
All right, Muria Zimbabwe. Now, unfortunately, we have reached an end of our program. That was VOA correspondent Columbus Mavunga. Let's meet same time, same place. Panapapa Nefenyure, Studio 7. I go by the name of Big Mike, at Big Mike 3 on Twitter and Instagram if you're looking to chat with me. Muria Zimbabwe. Let's meet same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.